Hey y'all, let's take it back quite a few years. Let's take it back to over 4 decades ago. What are we on? Almost 5 decades now. To a time where they calling around the summer of love, or just before that time, 66, 67, in the middle of the emergence of the hippie movement. Let's take a time where America was very much changing. You had the war in Vietnam cranking up heavily. You had the civil rights movement that had been going on for a decade. You had a lot of things going down. And enters the San Francisco sound, the first musical revolution in the States. Now, out of all of that, you have, out of seeming nowhere, a group rise to the pinnacle above most with just one album, and from that album they continue on for a strong 4-year stretch. Now they already dropped an album, but that album will go down as, it was an okay album. But with Surrealistic Pillow, it is a quintessential look into the 60s. Not just the sound, not just musically, but culturally, societally. You begin to see a shift even in the album itself. Surrealistic Pillow, for those of you who are in the rock, it is a must listen to. For those of you who are in the artistry, I recommend it. For those of you who want an instruction on how to blend multiple genres effectively, creatively, and at the same time portray it to the general masses, I tell you to take a look at Surrealistic Pillow. And in this, as with all my album reviews, I will go through each song and break it down bit by bit. Now, it's been a long while that this video has come, probably like 2 years. I won't even lie. There's a lot of issues why it hasn't come out earlier. It's not that I haven't thought about it, it's just some things in life and whatnot. But we in here, we're gonna go in, let's go. Alright, first off, we start off with an opening track that was very intriguing. This track, She Has Funny Cars. First of all, the title of the song. I'm not aware actually of where they got the title from. I haven't heard whether it be from Marty Ballin, Jorma Cochran, Grace Slick, or any of them. I got to mention, and what I didn't mention earlier is that Grace Slick, legendary Grace Slick. I must say, I'm not trying to show subjectivity, but one of my favorite singers of all time. I can argue to say one of the greatest singers of all time. Okay, she joined with this album. That helped enhance it because you brought in so many other elements with Grace Slick's presence, and along with it, she brought in 2 of the most iconic songs for not only Jefferson Airplane and rock history, but just musical history in general. And we'll get to those in due time. But back to She Has Funny Cars. This title, man, it's interesting to say the least. Trying to break it down, you could break it down in a few different ways, but that just sets us up for not only the difference maker that this album was and still is to this very day, but also it brings forth the light of some of the undertones of what was going on, not only societally, but just in the music industry. Here you had iconoclasts emerging. You had people who were sick and tired of the old pop thing. Blues was, you had folk, but folk, you did start having folk rock. Folk started becoming poppy, for lack of a better word. You started becoming pop. I know everything was considered pop at one time, but the pop sound at this time, about 67 to 70, you start seeing differences in each of the genres. This was one of those albums that began to sever from the pop thing. I mean, you had the Monterey Pop Festival, International Pop Festival, if I'm not mistaken, but you could clearly see that rock was emerging as its own separate entity. You had rock and roll since the 50s. Okay, so it's not like this was unaware. Country was beginning to separate itself from pop. Folk, Bob Dylan was pushing. You had Phil Oakes. You had various individuals. And along this time, you also, because I believe I also reviewed the Doors album. That was coming at the same time. So you had all these influences coming around the same time, and this title, just the title alone, just is like, hold on, time out, pause for the cause. What are you talking about? So that in itself brings the appeal. But behind this, the song goes nothing like you would anticipate. And that's another element of this album. You don't know what you're going to get until you unwrap this beautiful gift. Because that's really what it is. It's a beautiful representation of this new, not just new thinking, but this new style, this new perspective on life, this new vibe, okay? This new lifestyle that was emerging, which she has funny calls. Dun, 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 dun. The rhythm and melody. This is one of those. It's a classic rhythm that it starts up with, but then it goes into this melodic, almost trance-like. It draws you in, and then it was weird because it had influences from the blues, which you had in Jefferson Airplane Takes Off, their first album. But then you start to see the little dabbling in the psychedelic, and that's beautiful. That's the beautiful part of it. But it also has a bit of folksy element to it. Not so much pop. It wasn't leaning towards, but it was getting away from. But you could clearly hear the influences of psychedelic. The experimentation right there with the bluesy and the folk, and it makes for a very listenable track. It makes for a phenomenal opening track. Okay, it's not the strongest in the album. It wasn't meant to be. It wasn't intended to be the strongest song in the album, but it introduces us to a pathway that will be very fun or scary. Who knows what we're gonna experience? We're going on this journey, surrealistic. Not only that, the album itself. Okay, the title of the album, Surrealism. That should indicate, before we even get to the opening track, what kind of thing we're going on here. A pillow, something you lay on, but surrealism, it's an art form. Go look it up. Moving on, Somebody to Love. Now, this was brought with Grace Slick and by her ex-husband, Darby Slick, okay? Somebody to Love, one of the most iconic songs of all time. Seriously. Without a doubt, one of the most iconic songs of all time. And yes, have I listened to both versions? Absolutely. Grace admits that Jefferson Airplane, as far as the musicians, were far superior to the Great Society. Great Society had its own version, but it was rough. It was this. It's not even. It was a step above a lot of the garage rock scene at the time. It had its own vibe. It had bordered on the ominous side. It was stiff. It was rigid. But with this, Somebody to Love, oh my goodness. It had a. It wasn't quite psychedelic rock, but it was borderline going in there. It was kind of like psychedelic folk rock, you could say. And with that emerging, this new sound, this San Francisco sound, this all these elements, all these different groups converging into one. This is what you have. All these different types of dudes. Because if you look even at the group at the time and its members, they were each with a different perspective and focus. And they brought all of those into it in their music. From the guitar playing lively to the strong, sometimes loud percussion section from the drums, okay? Then you have Grace Slick and her phenomenal. She just begins to shine, and the story that's told, it gets to the heart of the matter and makes you think. This song makes you think. Not only is it musically, from the melody is relatively simple, but it does have wrinkles of complexity. The rhythm section is it's rhythmic, but it's rhythmic off-centered, I would say. What I mean is, it's not this over repeated rhythm that you hear sometimes in hip-hop and sometimes in even pop. The rhythm is repeated, it's clear, but it takes a back seat and it kind of shifts a little in the midst of the song. And depends on which version you play. On this album, you know, it's obviously the album version, but live versions, they start playing with it. And that's what I mean, it's off-center. You can kind of go your own way with it in this own song. So it's not held to a box, to a format. And that in itself is just beautiful. There's so much you could say about this one song alone, but we'll move on. My Best Friend. Now this is a very folk pop kind of song. It's funny that folk and pop go together, but it does. It's pop because Marty Ballin, his vocals on this song was well done. Now this is from the drummer. The drummer apparently wrote the song or whatnot, but very, you know, laid back, chill. And this is the era. This is one of those songs that actually encapsulates the era, and it's honestly the message that it's preaching. My best friend, you know, it's talking about, it's kind of sort of the love and peace vibe that we're going, you know, are you going to be there for me kind of thing, you know, through thick and thin, you know, we there, and we're kind of sort of trying to make a better society, better world kind of vibe. But then Grace Slick, not only does Marty Ballin sound excellent in this, she backs it up. And if I'm not mistaken, what's his face? The guitarist, his name slips my mind. Paul Kantner, yeah. They both back it up, and it makes for this very harmonious sound, and it takes it to another level. So it's not just another song that you listen to, like, oh, I'm my best friend. It's like, it causes you to pause. And once you pause, you really start letting this lyric seep in. And it starts sending you, not so much on a spiritual voyage on this song, but it starts seeping into your psyche, and it's like, it becomes cerebral at that point. Instead of just, you know, listenable, you know, it's got a nice little melody. It's like, it starts becoming cerebral. And that's the beauty of what the folk element brings to it. The pop was the listenable, the grabbing, the attention grabber of the time, but the folk was the one that was driving the message, driving the lyrics, saying, hey, listen up, man, we gotta, you know, rethink some things. Moving on to Today, obviously one of the best songs on the album. I would argue, let me see, out of all of these, probably the third best song on the album. No lie. Ballin and Paul Kantner, these two, when they came together, they made some phenomenal music. They really did. Today, what genre do you even begin to put this in? It had influences from all over the place. Clearly psychedelic, you know, bearings to it. Clearly grounded in psychedelic bearings. But then it was this kind of this rock. It was grounded in psychedelic, but it wasn't psychedelic rock. It had rock. It was just pure rock. But yet you had this folk vibe to it, and you know, it had the atmosphere of pop, but then pop clashing with rock. Pop clashed with rock in this song, and it made for a phenomenal explosion onto the scene. This was the true, I mean, She Has Funny Cars, although it was entrance, it was nice, and, you know, Somebody to Love will get you going, My Best Friend, but Today just smashes. And for those who don't know, I say Somebody to Love was the second best song on the album, but this was the third. This was the song that really was like, yo, we're here. This is the statement song. We're not just a regular, you know, group. You know, we're trying to push something here. We're trying to push a message. We're trying to say, yo, you got to pay attention with what's going on. The beautiful thing about Jefferson Airplane, and not just their name, they literally, their name represented, their title, their name represented what they were about. They're taking you on this journey. They're showing you, it's like an overview of what's going on out here, okay? They're saying, today, need you more than before. And it's this kind of love story that's told, but you get this, it's not an ominous vibe, but it has a very serious tone to it. The atmosphere behind it, and it does change in the middle of the song, and the harmonious nature, once again, of Marty Ballin and Grace Slick, that those two going back, you know, once she comes in, it just excels to another level. But it's like, yo, I really need you. It begs emotion, but there's something behind this. It's not just a love song. I'm not gonna write you a love song because you asked for it. It's something more, something deeper, something really going on, something very serious behind this. And that in of itself, I think, is the essence of Jefferson Airplane and what they bring to the table. Phenomenal musicians, phenomenal songwriting, whatever else. But behind it, there was something greater being told, being presented toward us, if you will pay attention and listen to it and discover it. And then coming back to me, this is just a very soft folk, once again, folk pop. Very, you know, I ain't gonna lie, this is a burner. This is kind of, you know, whether you burning or tripping right here, seriously, because the laid back, chill nature of this song. Come back to me. He's also, again, telling a story, but while he's telling a story, it's kind of like a testimonial kind of thing, and it makes you almost like a conversation rather than just singing. And so what it does is it takes, in the middle of the album, you have all this, you know, going on, and it breaks it down. The beautiful part about this album is that you can take any of these songs and listen to it. But when you put them all together in this album, the construction of this album is very interesting. When we get to this point of coming back to me, you had She's Funny Cars. You had this energetic entrance song. Somebody to Love is a hard hitting, you know, it's not like it's you know, the most radical thing ever, but it's when I'm saying it's hard hitting, it's moving you, you know, going, and then we break it. We going, hold on, we're going in the roots, we're going to very listenable, and then we go to Today, and it's like, whoa, and then we drop that to Come Back to Me. It's like we're going on this legitimate ride. Instead, it's not just peaking, we're going on this flowing ride. It's almost like a river. And so Coming Back to Me is that calm in the river, you know. It's like, let's reel it back in before we go hardcore into the rest of the album. 3/5 of a Mile. Remember I talked about, now we're going into one of the loudest songs of the album, one of the high energetic, and this whole 3/5 of a mile in 10 seconds, this made me think. Just the title makes you think a lot. It's like, The Mess, 3/5 of a mile in 10 seconds. What you know, I was thinking, are we tripping? You know, is this a car? This is crazy. This is fast. 3/5 of a mile in 10 seconds. Okay, that's really fast. Really, really fast. But then you go into it. This, I mean, do away with people that come on obscene. The lyrics make it, whoa. They dial it back. Whoa. Hold on. Time out. Pause. Not only is the rhythm is very, I won't say simplistic, but it's very repetitive. It's very repetitive. But that melody is what it really, you know, the guitars that go off in this one, it doesn't go too experimental, it doesn't go to the extreme, but there's just something very intoxicating about the rhythm. Not trance like, but something that gets you, you could follow it easily. But in doing so, it allows for the lyrics to explode, and this just hits you and hits you and hits you, and then you sitting there and it's like, damn, really? Whoa, whoa, whoa. So the lyrics match the ferocity that's being presented. Ferocity at the time, you gotta understand, this is at that time. This isn't, the 70s and 80s, 90s was later to come. But at that time, this was a heavy hitter. You best believe that. Compared to what a lot of the groups were doing, a lot of legendary groups, the Beatles, the Beach Boys, you name it. I mean, Cream had some loud, but Cream, they didn't drop that many albums. But, you had Jimi Hendrix. But most of the groups weren't producing loud music. You didn't really have Steppenwolf coming out you hard yet. So, for this is pretty, revolutionary in its own sense. But then remember I talked about the dropback. DCBA 25. Now, I've heard, because the title is strange to say the least. And from what I've gathered, the information I gathered, a lot of theories is it's meant for the guitar chords, DCBA, and the repetitive nature of it. And it's also 25 referring to LSD, which shouldn't be a shocker. I mean, this is really, when you're talking about laid back and possible tripping, this is a possible good trip kind of sound you want. You don't want, compared to maybe the last song, it's kind of laid back and you just enjoy the atmosphere that is presented, this painted, beautiful kind of thing. Not too much to say about the song. It's kind of a singer-songwriter kind of song. Again, it's mainly focused on the atmosphere that presents the what was going there. How do you feel? Now, this is by Mr. Tom Master. This song, flutes. You don't hear flutes too often in music, and that brought, and this is definitely a folk kind of pop. Do you see what I mean? And it just, the way they just, like the sway of the wind kind of thing, the melodic nature that the voices went with, it's just outstanding. And again, once Grace Slick enters, Marty Ballin he just leads it on, and then when Grace Slick enters, it weaves around in a kind of, not like a barbed wire, but just the entanglement. It's a beautiful mating almost. It's to the point of when people were wondering if these two were actually involved with each other in a relationship, because it's just almost like two lovers talking amongst each other. And that's really what it is. It's a love song, but it's not a love song at the same time. It's a love song, but it's almost like, I don't know if we're talking friendship, if we're talking, dating, marriage, or any of that kind of nature. So it's very, I won't say symbolic, but it's getting there. The true message behind what it is interesting. But yeah, the acoustics on this one are absolutely outstanding if you will pay attention to the detail. Embryonic Journey. Cognate. This is no lyrics on this song, but journey nonetheless. And embryonic, that's going toward a baby, a quote unquote fetus, the infant while in the womb. And you can go along with it. The acoustic guitar on this is outstanding. It's tremendously well written, tremendously performed. And if I'm not mistaken, this was a song that was played when they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame back in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. This song encapsulates a lot. And when you think about the title, then you think about its played, it produces thoughts about life. This is a life kind of song. There ain't nothing fancy about it. Although the guitar is, you could say, it's eloquently played, there ain't nothing fancy about this. There ain't all these hooping and all this extra. It's just simple, stripped down, classic acoustic guitar. And when it's simplicity comes complexity. Paradoxical, yes, but that's life. A journey. Moving on to the best song and clearly one of the most iconic songs ever is Grace Slick. And she brought this from another one from Great Society. But when it came to Great Society, had it was nice, it was good. It was a good song. But Jefferson Airplane, White Rabbit, man. Oh my goodness. The trip. This is psychedelic rock to a T. This was the emergence for real of psychedelic. This is one of the songs that emerged psychedelic rock. I would say this one in the end, if for nothing else, I'm talking about onto the main, like really exploded, saying this is here, this genre is alive. The End, By the Doors, and White Rabbit. Those two really stamped saying, yeah. No longer are we just going to, this was, you had your pop and different things. White Rabbit told, it signified what time it was. What was coming, okay? And in the next couple albums, this is exactly right. Because psychedelic rock was here to stay. This, or at least here to stay for a time being. This was, White Rabbit was the essential track. How do I describe how much of an influence this track had on the description of an era? This track represented everything going on. The nature, you talking about serious, the dun 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 dun, and then the guitar to back it up is very seeming. It's almost dark in its essence. And then Grace Slick with her vocals. Oh man, her vocals that were very. She could take it high, but it's powerful. One pill makes you larger, and we're now going down a rabbit hole with Alice, and yes, it's based on Alice in Wonderland, and it's telling the dark, true nature of, Alice in Wonderland. This is one big trip, one big psychedelic trip. That's the entire story of Alice in Wonderland, and that's what's being presented. We're gonna take off the whitewash, so you have. Of this children's story, and we're going to go into the very nature, and we're going to make this cerebral. We're going to make a lot of literary allusions, but we're going to drop some drug reference. We're going to drop some psychedelic references as well. When the white cream's off with her head, remember what the Dormouse said: feed your head, feed your head. That line right there. And that just, this is also a song that made them targeted by the feds, okay? You can't get away from what's going on here. Trippy as hell. And phenomenal every time. Never gets old. And the last but definitely not least, Plastic Fantastic Lover. And I was wondering what this honestly meant, but if you go listen to the 03 release, I think, hold on, is it the 03 release or is it the, no, it's not on this album. It's the extended version of the of another album I'll do later. It's the Volunteers album. It actually explains about the TV. Plastic Fantastic Lover. This is very, very interesting song to end an album, to say the least, by Ballin. But it's actually almost rap the way he went out. It was very fast the way he lyrically. It's very fast, and he's telling something, and it's crazy, but it's sending a message more. Musically, it's okay. It's really okay. Nothing special. It ain't White Rabbit level. It's probably musically probably one of the top 3 least best songs in the album, to be honest with you. But when it comes to lyrically, this dude is talking and he's presented. It's like almost like if you were a 1984 Brave New World kind of vibe, a very dystopian sense, in which it matches with the scientific sci-fi nature of the time. The very, we're going into this new futuristic with automatons, robots, that kind of vibe that's coming. Again, reminds me a lot of sci-fi, various genres that have come. Some Isaac Asimov as well, with iRobot. You could, even Ray Bradbury, in the very nature of it, and our obsession, as he would say, with television, our quote-unquote obsession with television, and the things that it brought us, the convenience and everything else, and the love affair that went along with it. Overall, again, this quintessential album, this album is a masterpiece. Not simply musically. This is an artistic masterpiece from start to finish. It encapsulates an era. It is a representation of a generation. And if you've never heard it, surprisingly, if you've been watching this video for this long, if you've never heard it, I highly recommend you listen to it. You listen to it again and again and again, and continuously listen to it. It increasingly gets better every time I hear songs from it, whether on Pandora, or listen to YouTube, whatever I listen to, on, whether it's on your iPod or whatever else. Alright, y'all, have a beautiful day, beautiful night, peace, and yes, more albums to come, and more frequently, I promise.